Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted, over the moon, enraptured to be joined in person by Scott McDermott.
Steady.
And joined all the way from Celtic Park by the one and only Craig Swan. Very festive looking Celtic Park.
Yeah, it's very festive. I'm happy. I'm raptured. That makes me feel good. That's a lovely start. Feel warm.
I'm guessing you might be a wee bit colder than us, Swanee.
Yeah, just a bit. But that's just the norm now. It was the same for the Leipzig game, but at least I've managed to put a jacket on this time. I realised what was going to be happening, so all good.
You're obviously there, Swanee, because it's the day before Celtic against Club Brugge in the Champions League. I understand, well, both Scott was there as well. Both you guys have been hearing from Brendan Rodgers today. It feels like everyone's in a pretty confident mood.
Yeah, I think confident would be a fair enough assessment, but also wary. I think Brendan Rodgers was at pains today to point out that one of the first things he said was, and I can understand this, that after such a brilliant performance against RB Leipzig and the point against Atalanta, because Club Brugge wouldn't be recognised as a kind of, from a major league and things like that, they're seen as more of a softer touch in the eyes of some of the fans, and Brendan Rodgers was very quick today to point out that it's going to be equally as tough a challenge. I think it's my own view as it will probably take a performance to the levels of the one Celtic produced against Leipzig to get a result against Bruges on Wednesday night. I think they're going to need to really play well again, but to be fair, that's what it should be like in the Champions League. You should have to hit the heights to get points on the board in the Champions League, so I'm expecting another cracking game. Two teams that score a lot of goals, so it should be great.
I tell you what, before I bring you in, Scott, why don't we just hear from the Celtic manager himself? We have a little clip. I believe it's actually your question you asked, Swanee. So let's hear what he was saying.
Brendan, you spoke to Robert about the belief that the team have now got and how they've embraced things. But is there a message there that you'll kind of never crack the Champions League code if you like? You've always got to be on, warning that things can go. You're always learning. Things can be tricky. Never think you've ever got it sussed.
No. Especially with the greatest respect, clubs like ourselves, it's always we have to bring our ability at the highest level into every game if we're going to have that opportunity to progress. It's a brutal competition in terms of the level, and the slightest mistakes get punished. And like you say, you can be really, like we had in the Leipzig game. We started the game really well, 15 minutes, and then we gave the ball away once. It leads to a corner, then you concede, and then all of a sudden you're on the back foot for 10 minutes. But we all know that. I think we've all seen it enough. You have to be laser focused in your concentration. You're bringing your performance level, and then, like I said, make it really difficult for the opponent. I think it's for us again another opportunity to show the power of Celtic Park. Like, I've got absolutely no doubt that every team and their supporters will feel that their football ground is special, and really special to be that, to play there, and I respect that. But I know this club, and I know the fans, and I know the stadium, so I know how special it really is to play here and how difficult it can be. But what you have to be able to do is then match that with the performance, and that's something that has really pleased me in these recent home games in the Champions League. So it's not just a tick box for players to come here and clubs to come and say they've played at Celtic Park, but it's to come and realise you're going to be in for a game here. And that combination of the support base and the team making it a really difficult night.
And the thing is, Scott, but that's certainly my take from it, is that you can tell he loves this, Brendan Rodgers. This is the stage he loves to play on.
Yeah, of course he does. He thinks, or he believes he belongs on this stage. And listen, quite rightly, he's a top manager that's managed at the highest level, both up here and down south. I just thought he made a great point there about the stadium, because it becomes a bit of a cliche, the Celtic Park atmosphere and teams coming here and being intimidated and stuff like that. And that is the case, but it doesn't happen without a performance.
Yeah.
No, there was a good few years, Swanee will back me up, a good few years recently, Celtic in Europe weren't great. They couldn't get victories in the Europa League or the Champions League, even at Celtic Park. So the atmosphere only has a real impact when the performance matches it, and that's what happened against Leipzig. And I agree with Swanee. I think I'm probably guilty of it myself. You come out of the Leipzig game and you think, wow, no, what a performance. And then you look at Club Brugge, your next home game, you think, Celtic will go and do them as well. But it's probably been a wee bit disrespectful to Bruges, given the results they've had, the kind of decent form that they're in, beating Aston Villa obviously in the Champions League, so they're no mugs. So they'll need to be wary. As I say, I agree with Swan. I think it's going to take that level of performance again to get the better of Bruges, but I think Celtic will do it. I've got confidence in them that they can reproduce that again, and if they do, I still think it'll be too strong for Bruges on the night.
That's the thing, Swanee. I mean, as Scott rightly says, as Celtic were beating Leipzig, Bruges were beating Aston Villa. They won 7-0 at the weekend domestically, we know that. But Celtic, I think right saying, going for 4 Champions League wins in a row, which is a pretty remarkable place to be in.
Yeah, it's an excellent place to be in, and obviously the one at the end of last season against Feyenoord was kind of written off as a bit of a dead rubber, but I think we said at the time it was quite an important game to win, because that baggage then would, because every time you turned up to do a Celtic press, it was, there hasn't been a win here in 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. I remember Ange Postecoglou getting asked about it and shrugging his shoulders and going, well, what's that got to do with me? I've been here for 8 of these years, but it just became a thing that was building. And I remember saying at the time that Feyenoord win was a massive win, because it took all that away before the start of this season, and with the fresh new league set up as well. And let's not pretend that I've said every game in the Champions League is, but there's levels in games, and I don't think Celtic are hand-picked a better first game. Slovan Bratislava, I think we look at the standard of the teams in the competition, that was the perfect way to get it going. Yeah. But Leipzig was just wonderful. Scott was there, same as myself. That was football being played on a level I don't think we've seen Celtic play in the Champions League. Actually, the way they took Leipzig apart. They beat Barcelona with a backs to the wall under Neil Lennon. This was taking a big team apart. Yeah. And the way they've reacted, I thought Brendan Rodgers' comments today were fabulous about, he was using words like trampoline effect, but the way they've bounced back, because after what happened in Dortmund, that was horrendous. But we kind of said at the time it was one of those nights where, everything flew in for Borussia Dortmund, but that kind of ripped the heart out of this young Celtic team. But the response has been unbelievable, really, and they've stuck to what they believe in. And I think most people would agree with Brendan Rodgers. 7 points out of 12 at this stage is an excellent return, but there's still work to be done. And you'll probably come to predictions in the game later. I mean, I'm like Scott. I think the Celtic will probably edge what could be a cracking game. But to be honest with you, Celtic, we used golfing parlance the last time. Celtic are under par at the moment, if you like. They've got a birdie on the board by beating Leipzig. I think if most people had said before it started, the home games are vital. The home games are absolutely vital. And you looked at the 4 home games and you said, well, if Celtic can get 10 points out of that, that's terrific. And that was probably based on Club Brugge, Slovan Bratislava, young boys at home, wins, and maybe get a point off Leipzig, and that gets you your 10 points. Mm-hmm. Celtic have got a birdie on the board by beating Leipzig already. So even if they got a point, wouldn't be the ideal result that they want, but it still keeps them ticking along. It still pushes them closer to their target. So I think what they've done, we talked about it before the Leipzig game, by getting the point in Atalanta, they took a bit of pressure off themselves. Scott and I mentioned this pre-kick-off in the Leipzig game, that there wasn't that same stress. It wasn't a last chance saloon kind of thing. They didn't have to get a result. And Scott made a great point that night when I thought it would make Leipzig more dangerous, that they had to win. And Scott said that might have the reverse effect. You might see that in Leipzig, and you maybe did. But they crumbled a wee bit when Celtic started taking them apart. They just couldn't handle it, and it was because of the pressure they were under. So, for me, I think Celtic can go into this game without stress tomorrow, and they can play their own way, and they can play with a bit of comfort. And if they do that and reach the Leipzig levels, they'll win again.
What about the team, guys? I mean, Swanee, I would suggest that after his cameo against Hearts at the weekend, Paulo Bernardo and/or Luke McCowan must be pretty close to getting a start tomorrow night.
To replace an Engels?
I think so. I like Engels. You can see he's a quality player, but Bernardo, I think it's brilliant.
It's a big call to leave.
That's a huge call. Huge call.
I don't know. I think he's pretty much settled on his favoured starting 11 now. For the biggest games, I think you'll see McGregor, Hatate, Engels, Kuhn, Maeda, Kyogo. And as we've touched on before, Trusty coming in beside Carter Vickers. I think that's his set 11 now, and obviously that will change as the season goes on. He'll have the luxury, Brendan Rodgers, of making changes domestically. But I think when it comes to the biggest games in Europe, and obviously the big ones at home, whether it be Old Firm games, Cup semis, finals, that would be his preferred 11. No injuries permitting.
I don't disagree, Swanee, but I would put Bernardo in. Are you of the same mind?
No.
Okay.
I'm not. No, and listen, and Paulo Bernardo has been absolutely outstanding and has an excellent claim to play. But one of the things that we talked about quite a lot with Celtic in the Champions League recently was power. It was one thing they kind of lacked. There was an ability for teams to push them around a little bit. Now, Arne Engels hasn't been at his glittering best on the ball in the last 2 games, if you like. I thought he was really good against Leipzig. That's probably unfair. But I know a lot of people pointed out in Atalanta, the job that he did, the work that he did for the team, and standing up and covering spaces and doing things. And he's got power and he's got strength. And the Belgians are a big, strong team. And I think Paulo Bernardo, I think is very technical and very good, but I think you need a bit of power in there as well. And I think that's something that Celtic and a lot of Scottish teams in Europe don't have. They don't have the power. We sometimes look at them at games. Scott, we've been at a million games involved in a load of teams, and you look, and the opposition seem to be about a foot taller all around the pitch. Wow. And after an hour, the Scottish team's legs are gone, and they seem you can never ever work it out. I think Engels gives Celtic a bit of power in there, and I think it makes a big difference. But
that's why he was signed.
Sorry, go on, Scott.
No, I was just going to say that's why he was signed by Rodgers. I think that physicality, of course, he's got a technical ability, but Rodgers felt, especially in Europe, they lacked a bit of physicality, and Engels brings that, as well as
I think Trusty as well does.
Yeah, 100%. And I think he thinks that's made a big difference.
And as you saw in Bergamo, Adam Ida, the option to a bit of power up in front as well. You need it. He talks about these things all the time: power, speed. He always mentions the two of them in the same breath. Mm-hmm. So I think Paulo Bernardo's got an excellent claim to start for what he's done. I just don't think he will.
And you mentioned Ida there, Swanee. I mean, I'm just really basically ticking this box by bringing it up, but he started in Atalanta. Do you think there's any way he could maybe be thrown in tomorrow?
No, because it was a different game plan in Bergamo. I mean, the game plan was clear. If you think back to that night, Schmeichel was trying to hit Ida all the time. They were trying to kind of invite Atalanta on and then hit Ida long. That was the game plan. And listen, they got away with a point, so it worked. And they played reasonably well on the night. But Swanee touched on it earlier. I mean, that Leipzig game, it was the speed and the intensity that they played that the Germans couldn't deal with.
Suffocated them, didn't
they? And Kyogo's key to that. You think of the goal, you think of Kuhn's second goal, where they press over in the corner. I mean, that starts for Kyogo up front. So there will be games away from home, I think, when Kyogo will be left out. I think there'll be games domestically when he's left out, again, especially away from home. But when it comes to these nights, when it's electric at Celtic Park, and Celtic are going to play with that high speed, high intensity pressing game, in a game that they think they can go and win, like tomorrow night, then Kyogo starts all day.
Swanee, just before I let you go, some of the fan comments we've had in. Nick O'Donnell, the new Champions League format was made for teams like Celtic. I'll be happy if we reach the last 16. Mac, play the way we did against Leipzig and we'll win. Kieran Conley, it'll be a hard game, but Celtic for the win. Home crowd will intimidate them, and the team is in form with no injuries. You mentioned earlier, Swanee, about predictions. If Celtic can get to 10 points, Opta say that they're 99% guaranteed at least a playoff. So will they get 10 points tomorrow?
Opta.
I know you'd like that one.
He's a hipster, Swanee. Can't believe it.
Listen, we don't know. We don't have a template. We don't know. I mean, before this tournament started, we were kind of, this new league phase started, kind of saying maybe 8-9 points would be enough to get through. Now people think it might be 10. Now people are looking at the teams that are underneath Celtic in the table and going, there's a lot of power there. how many points is it going to take? I don't think we know. I genuinely don't think we know. I do think if Celtic were to win tomorrow night, they would be there, because I'd be pretty shocked if Young Boys won here.
Mm-hmm.
So that would get you 11, and you would guess that would be enough. But again, it's just a guess. It's just a guess. And listen, I don't want to steal Scott's thunder if you ask him later on, but I thought he made a great point today. The new Champions League format is great because it's fresh, play new opposition all the time. It's really good, but it doesn't have to deal out some different hands in terms of the fixtures.
Yeah.
Scott made the point about RB Leipzig. You look at their 8 fixtures, appalling.
Ridiculous.
Incredible, aye.
When the draw came out, I mean, you don't even have a situation in a league where the teams are playing the same teams. It's just, and Celtic, it was said at the time, and it was over-egged at the time, oh, what a great draw for Celtic. Every game's tough in the Champions League, of course it is, but there's levels and there's tougher games, and I don't think getting Young Boys at home and Slovan Bratislava at home, Celtic could ask for much more to get a chance. And Brugge would be completely different from playing them here at Celtic Park. So it's hard to tell because we don't know who the other teams, unless you go through every single team and look at the fixtures with a fine-tooth comb, you're not going to know. But if they get to 10 points, you would be hopeful.
And also the Villa game, as much as the Villa game on paper looks like the toughest game, obviously going away from home to a Premier League team, it'll almost take care of itself because of the nature of the game. There'll be an edge to that.
A bit to it.
I agree with that, Scott. I agree with that. I see Celtic Blackburn, Celtic Liverpool, and that. And Aston Villa are terrific. There's no doubt, but they have their days.
Yep.
When they can be beat by Brighton or Bournemouth, but and you're right. That game will have a different edge, and I think I agree with you. I think that's a game Celtic could get something out of.
I think so.
Crystal Palace got a 2-2 draw there at the weekend. I definitely think it's there. Well, predictions then, Swanee. How do you think it'll go tomorrow night?
I actually think it'll be a real humdinger of a game. I think it could be 3-2 Celtic. I really, because obviously Bruce scored 7 at the weekend. They're not shy of scoring goals. We all know what Celtic can do. I think it could be a terrific game. I really do think it could be a cracker. Listen, you would hope that Celtic didn't concede 2, but I think they've got the score. They've shown it already. 5 here against Slovan Bratislava, 3 against Leipzig. Could have been more against Leipzig, to be honest, the way they finished the game. So, a high-scoring cracker with Celtic just winning it, I'd say.
Scott, the Jink?
I'm a wee bit more conventional. Listen, I've tipped 2-0 in the paper, I think, tomorrow, so I'll need to stick with it. Listen, Swanee's probably right. I mean, Bruges will pose a threat. They've scored a lot of goals recently, especially at the weekend, but I don't know, I just think I think Cameron Carter-Vickers said today in the press conference he thinks they're more mature this season in this competition, and I think he's got a real point, and I think the Leipzig game highlighted that. And if we said at the start, if they produce that same level, the same speed, the same intensity, the same quality, then I think they'll be too strong for Bruges. I can see them getting a couple of goals. They'll be doing well to keep a clean sheet, but no, listen, I'll stick to my 2-0.
The maturity comment that you just made there, Scott, I thought that was almost evident, and I know we spoke about that Celtic have grown up since Dortmund and how they've reacted to that. But it was something that was mentioned after the Slovan Bratislava game, that Celtic turned that into a Premiership game.
Yeah.
That was a game that you could tell inside 10-15 minutes that Celtic were better than Slovan Bratislava. But there's been loads of opposition at Celtic Park, as you touched on, in the last 10 years that have got results that you probably wouldn't have got. But Celtic actually, the way they went about their business that night was as if they were playing, I'm not going to name names to be respectful, but a team in the Premiership.
Yeah.
It was like they were playing a Motherwell or something, and they thought that they could. I'm not going to name names in a name. You know what I'm getting at? They felt that players know themselves. You boys know yourselves. They know inside 10 minutes when the player they're up against, the 1-1, and they're like, we're better than this team.
Yeah.
And they kind of carried that out through the game, and that was a maturity that they showed. So
I think
they can get on top of the individual battles early doors tomorrow and figure out that they're better. It wouldn't surprise me if they were nice and composed and played the way Scott says and took care of the Belgians.
I think the maturity thing as well goes back to what Brendan Rodgers said at the press conference about the Leipzig game. We were there, Swanee. No, they started like a house on fire, but then they had this 10-15 minutes spell where they looked rocky all of a sudden. And I think a few years ago in Champions League games, I'm not saying Celtic would have crumbled, but they'd maybe have lost a couple, and it'd have been a real struggle for them. What I really admired that night was they went through the wee 10-minute sticky patch. They conceded a goal, lost a couple of corners, looked as if they were going to concede again, but eventually,
put away for losing the second goal for a glancing header in the near post.
Exactly.
It should have been 2-0.
But after the 10 minutes, Callum McGregor in particular just got a hold of the game again and just started building it again. And the fact that they went from that rocky patch to the kind of blistering performance again that they'd started the game with, I thought showed a level of maturity, because it's no easy to do that at that level.
Against such a good team.
Yeah.
Swanee, it's always a pleasure. I think we'll let you go and get a heat now.
Breath weather.
Thanks very much. Safe travels up the road. Hope it's a good game for you tomorrow night as well.
I'll for some lights for my Christmas tree here. Thanks, boys.
Cheers, Swanee. See you soon. Craig Swan there, live from Celtic Park.
That wee bit of smoke was just his vape, by the way. That wasn't the cold.
I was going to say that. Perfect excuse. Obviously, Celtic, Scott, is the kind of main talking point for today and tomorrow. We know Rangers and Hearts play on Thursday, and we'll talk about them a bit later in the week. But there was a couple of Rangers points that I wanted to ask you about tonight. The first one being Patrick Stewart getting brought in as CEO. Not starting to the 16th.
Yeah,
it was a bit of a cynical start date. Do you not think?
That's I think that's called in kind of employment circles as that's got nothing to do with me starting date.
But the thing is, who was going to hold it against them?
I don't know. Listen, I'm a bit cynical like you as well. I mean, if the guy is out of work, I don't know why he couldn't have started right away. But there's no denying the fact that. And I suppose it is quite sad for a Rangers' point of view. It looks from the outside as if they've thought about it and said, look, 2 really tough games. Spurs at home in the Europa League, where they'll be big underdogs, and then obviously a cup final where Celtic are going to be massive favourites at Hampden. And in all seriousness, it looks as if they've picked that date for them to start because that might be a proper reset moment for everyone at the club in terms of looking back at the first half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't doubt, of course, especially from the football side, if you're Philippe Clement, I mean, no matter, irrespective of form, they'll get into that cup final believing they can win. If they don't, then there's a serious problem within that dressing room. But from the outside, as you say, it looks a bit sus that he's going to start that day. We
had on Record Sport Online today a story kind of doing the rounds on social media about Graham Potter potentially being linked with the Rangers job and how it might, quote unquote, excite him. I mean, it's obviously. I think somebody else said it. I was going to say it wasn't him that said it. But linking how that is with Patrick Stewart, do you think his appointment will strengthen Clement? Or is it more likely to usher his kind of exit? Well, put it this way, I mean, if he starts on that day and they've lost heavily to Spurs and then lost the cup final, I don't think there's any denying Patrick Stewart's first job will be to decide whether Philippe Clement's the right guy to take Rangers forward, and that's going to be it's a hefty first job. Talk about having a big decision to make on your first day. Now, not make it in the first day, but you know what I mean. Listen, he's got to lead. That's what Rangers need at the moment. I mean, from everything that we're reading about this appointment, it looks as if he will be the guy that makes decisions. He will run the club and have the final say on a lot of things. And if that's true, I hope it is true, because for me, that's exactly what Rangers need. They've lacked leadership for a long time now. They've lacked someone in there making the big decisions and actually being qualified to make the big decisions. In terms of him himself, I mean, because Rangers' record recently in recruitment across the board hasn't been great, there seems to be a bit of scepticism about it. But listen, he's worked at a really high level. There's no denying that. He worked at Man United, for that length of time, to be involved in those kind of circles. The guy knows. I personally think, on paper it looks like a good appointment by Rangers, and I think,
if it is, then John Gilligan especially will need to take a lot of credit. He's been criticised at times for taking for the length of time it's taken.
Yeah.
But if he gets it right, it'll have been worth it. Listen, I think we'll know once you hear Patrick Stewart speak and you hear what his strategy is for Rangers and what he's planning to do going forward. I think you'll probably be able to make your mind up pretty quickly whether he's the right guy for the job.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in that. I think with these positions, see when you grow up in Glasgow and you know these clubs and you know the environment, I think you tend to know what's required to cope within it. I cast my mind back to when Dom Mackay got the job at Celtic. I remember being at the unveiling and walking out of there, and it's no disrespect to him, not really switched on guy, but I remember walking out there thinking this guy's no right for Celtic, and it proved to be the case. I thought the same with James Bisgrove at Rangers, which has proved to be ultimately a poor appointment. He was in a marketing role, I think, doing well. He goes up to chief exec, and it hasn't worked out. I think you'll know with Patrick Stewart whenever he does his first interview, whenever he gets unveiled. I think you'll get a real sense of what this guy's about and whether he's got the minerals to handle it at Rangers and to actually progress him, because there has to be alignment now at that club. As I say, there's been a lack of leadership. Whether it's Philippe Clement as manager or somebody else, there has to be an alignment for the board, to Patrick Stewart, to Niels Coppin as technical director, and then the manager. And the fans, as we know, are at breaking point, and they need to have a bit of encouragement for the future.
Another name linked to Rangers today was Leeds midfielder Joe Gelhardt. James Lewis replied, I don't even know if he's a good player, but he said it's a goal scorer they need. They've got enough midfielders as it is. Again, on Patrick Stewart's entry going into the January transfer window, I mean, do you think you'll have many funds? I taught a lot of talk about Rangers finances, but having said that, I mean, I was thinking about it the other night. I mean, Beale spent 15 million quid.
Yep.
Clement spent something similar. They've had money.
I think John Gilligan said there will be some money to spend.
Aye.
So I don't think it'll be a lot.
And would you agree it's a striker they need?
Aye, they need to get a striker.
Aye.
And the only reason I'm hesitating because I feel as if there's that many positions.
Aye, they do need to strengthen all, but immediately it needs to be a striker. I would suggest that.
Well, listen, I mean, I don't want to go on about Dessers again, but he came away.
The Dessers podcast.
He came off at half time. I think he got his first touch after about 6.5 minutes at the weekend. He comes off at half time, having contributed very little. I know the service wasn't great. It was a abysmal performance for Rangers in the first half. Philippe Clement pretty much admitted that himself. Danilo made a difference when he came on. I've not been Danilo's biggest fan either. I don't know if he's at the level. Obviously injuries have hampered him. Is he really at the level to go and be a Rangers number 9, to go and win titles? I'm not sure, but he definitely made a difference when he came on, just because of his movement, his sharpness. He was taking defenders places he didn't want to go. His link-up play, especially with Czerny, looked good, which is encouraging for the supporters. I mean, there's no much to get encouraged by at the moment, but I thought the way Czerny, Hadji, Danilo linked up, on the edge of the box at the weekend should offer a bit of encouragement. But no, I think they need to go and sign a centre forward. And just on Gelhardt, I know you're saying he's a midfield. I don't know where he's been playing recently, but he certainly started as a striker.
Oh, did he? I didn't realise that.
Started as a striker and was really highly rated at Leeds.
I remember him being really highly rated. There was a name that kind of
he was being raved about when he came through at Leeds. So whether he's dropped back a bit into a kind of number 10 or midfield role, I'm not sure. But listen, he's got a decent pedigree for the Championship. So if he was available and it was cheap enough, then he's maybe somebody would look at.
Jim Grant's written in on that note. He's shockingly bad. He was on loan at Sunderland last season, I think. Cheers for that, Jim. Right on
He's done
cue.
my skin report.
Right. Right, the other thing that I wanted to touch on before we wrap up tonight is there's a massive game in the Premiership tonight. Massive, at least, for David Gray and Hibs.
Oof.
I mean,
Huge.
I don't take any pleasure in saying this. He looks like a really good guy. I'm sure he's a good coach. But if Hibs don't get a win at Easter Road tonight, I think that could be curtains for David Gray.
It could well be. I I feel for David Gray, I must admit, because
He's
I think,
not had much help, has
I
he?
think he's a good guy. By all accounts, I mean, everything I hear about him as a coach and as a man manager is all good. So quite why it's not working for Hibs and why these players can't get a result. I mean, I suppose that then it does boil down to players' performance, players' commitment. I don't know, but I feel for him. He's not had a lot of luck either. When you think of the red cards they've had at crucial times in games, none more so at the weekend.
The one at the weekend, you'd just be going mad about
I
if you
mean,
were him.
listen, I mean, I'm sitting at Ibrox and you see, sorry, that was a later game. You finished at Ibrox,
Aye.
you see the scores coming through and you see Hibs go one up early. And you're thinking in your head, that's a perfect start for them. And Dundee haven't been great recently
Aye, but
either,
that's,
so you're
yeah.
thinking
Aye.
that this could be it. But to get a guy sent off after about 12 minutes or
Something
something.
so stupid,
I mean,
middle of
it
the
was
park.
just-
Aye.
And because of because of previous performances and how the campaigns went for them. Because if you were on a high and you were on a winning run, getting a guy sent off wouldn't have a big effect on you. No, you would think we can get through this with 10 men, they'll be shape. But I just think as soon as it happens, the morale just sinks within that team.
The goalie giving away a goal as well. It's just, I honestly, off the park, I think David Gray
I
is
think
no
he's handled himself brilliantly.
Oh, brilliantly, but I mean in terms of the recruitment stuff, I thought it was really interesting on last night's Hotline Live. Our kind of transfer guru, Scott Burns, was on and he said he knew for a fact that there were several names mentioned to Nick Montgomery as potential signings last season that Nick Montgomery and his team said, no, they're not good enough, that ended up signing for Hibs this summer under David Gray. Now, that is pretty mad to me.
Yeah. By the way, it's mad, especially when in the in between times you've appointed a technical director in Malcolm Mackay, who you would think, along with the recruitment team, would be in charge of getting the signings in.
Aye.
So I'd be amazed if Malcolm Mackay would be happy with that, or if you would settle for that. No, if you're going into that job, new technical director, new head coach, but you're having to bring players in who were part of the previous regime's recruitment. Oh, listen, maybe that is what happened, and Malcolm Mackay goes in, trusts the recruitment
Maybe
team.
disagrees, or aye.
Or trusts them and says, look, you've done work on these guys, let's have a look at them and bring the. You always kind of, if there's a list of 5, they'll get it down to 2 or 3, and then pick what one they want. But listen, recruitment's not been great for a long time at Hibs, a long time before David Gray and Malcolm Mackay were anywhere near the place. It's not been brilliant to mention the goalkeeper. He's no covered himself in glory this season so far. He's no helped the manager or his teammates. There's been a few errors, one at Celtic Park I can remember, which was just horrendous as well.
The defence has been wild for as long as you can remember as well.
Defence, it feels like it's been wild for
for a long
whole
time.
life.
You know.
That was the big problem in the summer for Hibs. One of the big problems was they had to get centre backs and a keeper.
And you thought with Gray you would get that?
You thought, yeah. You thought even the pedigrees of, in terms of Ware O'Hora and
Epiteta,
where they came from, you thought they should be decent. They should shore it up. They've got physicality. They've came for decent leagues. Even the goalkeeper had a decent kind of history. Where you thought he'll be a decent replacement for obviously David Marshall going out, but it hasn't worked. And that's why I feel for the manager a bit.
The worrying thing for Hibs fans and for David Gray as well is that see the teams that you would expect to be in the relegation conversation, your Ross Counties, your even Kelly are down there, but they've strung together ones. Ross County, St Johnstone, they're all winning games. They're all showing signs of life.
I know.
And that's why I say if they do lose tonight to Aberdeen, I can't see David Gray getting much. They have to change something.
Even Hearts. Hearts shouldn't be down there.
Aye.
But they are. But the same breath, the new managers come in, there's been a bit of an upturn. I know obviously they lost to Celtic, but in general there's been an upturn in performances at Hearts, and you feel as if they're about to kick on. They get a wee run of games now.
And we know they've got quality. They've got good players at this level.
Whereas Hibs, it just doesn't look like happening. No. And you're right, I mean that game tonight, I was thinking about it today. I mean, I fancy Aberdeen to win.
Me too.
Because
I just think they'll have too much.
And also I think Aberdeen, because they were in such a good run, obviously they've had a couple of defeats in the Cup to Celtic and lost at the weekend to St Mirren, but they've got a lot of kind of feel-good factor in the bank, do you know what I mean, with Jimmy Tilleen and the fans, and I think they'll take a big travelling support tonight. They will be confident that they can bounce back for the St Mirren game at the weekend. Whereas Hibs, as we touched on, I mean, the confidence and the morale must be at an all-time low. And if Aberdeen scored first, or if Hibs got off to a bad start, the crowd will undoubtedly turn. It'll be a low home crowd anyway, I would expect. And it could turn toxic if they go a goal or two down.
I hope I'm wrong. Sorry, I don't mean to offend Aberdeen fans. What I'm trying to say is, I hope Hibs win. No offence to Aberdeen, but I can't
Just
see
to keep the manager in that job.
I just think
Nah, you're right. You'd like to see him get back.
No, and he's, it seems like he's not done anything wrong. It's just a mad.
And listen, remember it's his first ever job.
Exactly.
I mean, this, if he does get the sack, it shouldn't mean the end for David Gray as a manager. As I say, everything you're hearing, you speak to players, you speak to coaches. I was at Hibs during the week doing an interview, spoke to a couple of the backroom team, and listen, I know they're going to back the guy that they're working with, but there's a real genuine feeling for David Gray. Not just that he's a good guy, that he's a very good coach and could be a good manager, but he's been thrust into that job, a massive job, given where Hibs were at the end of last season. Big pressure, a big name technical director. You've got everything going on upstairs with the Black Knights, and there's pressure for that as well when there's investment for America. A huge job for his first in management, and I just hope that if it does go pear-shaped for him, it doesn't scar him. I don't think it will. I think he would have the confidence to come back again, in what role or where that might be, who knows. But I think he's a decent coach and could be a decent manager, but it's not happening for him just now.
Well, we'll be discussing how that goes and plenty more in tomorrow night's Hotline Live. Gianni in the watching live on YouTube says, "Where's Keith hiding?" Now,
good question.
We had to let Keith go, Gianni. Just wasn't cutting it. No, he's on holiday.
I
know. He's got more holiday than Judith Chalmers.
Unbelievable.
I
can't believe he's going on holiday without me. After all our travels together.
That's true, aye. No, he'll be back next week, I think, so aye. Can he wait? I think that brings us to the end of Tuesday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Scott, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Cheers, Dan.
And thank you very much to Craig Swan at Celtic Park, and for all of your comments. We'll be back at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Cheers.